This is The Rise Leader, the podcast dedicated to empowering today's leaders to create lasting impact. Each episode delivers insights, strategies, and inspiration from top professionals and visionary thinkers, designed for those leading teams on the front lines and from the executive suite. Discover actionable tools and inspiring stories to elevate your leadership journey. Step up, make a difference, and join the Rise Leader community.
Welcome to the Rise Leader podcast, where we are committing to sharing actionable leadership insights to empower our community to level up their leadership. Today's episode is sponsored by Burgess. Better building starts here. Today's episode is Success Through Healthy Living. Our guest is Lucy Dutton. She is a holistic performance coach and inspirational speaker. She is the founder of Grace and Grit Coaching. She's going on 3 decades of coaching. She's joining us from Colchester, England. This is my first official international guest, Lucy, so that's phenomenal. And Lucy, could you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Oh, well, thank you, first of all, so much for inviting me here, Jeff. I'm very excited to be your first international speaker, so that's wonderful. And yeah, my background is an interesting one. It didn't kind of go straight into being a coach or a speaker. In fact, quite the opposite. I was a dancer. So I would get up on stage, put the makeup on, dress up, and wouldn't speak at all. And so this is a really big change. And it was something that I danced professionally for 10 years. I then went into a natural health center, worked at a natural health center for about 7 years, and just helping. And this is really where the holistic part came in, because there I was seeing everybody who was being a therapist in different areas, plus the flotation tanks, and people were coming out with these amazing results. So I was seeing all of this happening while I was working there. So that's where the holistic part really got ingrained into what I was doing. And then the healthy living part was, from there, I became a health and wellbeing coach, going from the fitness side of being a dancer to the health and well-being side, the nutrition, eating properly, making sure you're having water and sleeping and all of that. It was just a very fantastic transition. So I've been doing that for 28 years and teaching before then, a little bit of teaching. And then it transitioned into the peak performance, again, really quite naturally, because I'd been doing all the coaching and mentoring with the healthy living side. All of the things that have come through my life have led me into doing the peak performance with the holistic part intertwined with it. And so healthy living and living well is always a foundation to whatever I do. And then the speaking side, I had to, in the health and nutrition business that I was in, I had to overcome being very, very shy. And so I forced myself out of my comfort zone into a very uncomfortable place. And I would get up on stage and I would speak. And I remember the very first time doing that, I sat down and I thought, never again. I'm not doing that for anybody. But then I kept on pushing myself. And as you can tell, it continued. And so that transition of becoming that person, of becoming the leader that I wanted to be, was a process. And now being able to coach people to make sure that they're healthy, that they're getting to the level they want to in all the different areas that I do that, and being a speaker as well, that's been my journey.
I love that evolution. And I know we're going to talk a lot about comfort zones today as well. So I'd love to hear your experience with that. Usually my first standard question is about leadership style. So I'll alter the question just a little bit. So how has your career path shaped either your leadership style and or your coaching style?
I think it's shaped it because I come from a place of understanding how I wasn't that person to start with, but that person was definitely inside me, right? So sometimes we're not living our biggest, best selves. And there's something that we need to overcome to get to that place. So I believe that everybody's got the answer inside them. Everybody's got the ability. If they want to pull it out of them, I can help them to pull that out of them. And so my leadership style, I would say, is it's nurturing, but it's also to the point. So I'm an empath, so I come from that very nurturing place and understanding, and that I can feel what somebody's feeling and I can understand what they're going through, which is great. But if you're not doing it, let's just cut to the chase. So come on, so there's that part to it as well. And also another thing that I added in is a technique that I use to go very deep. It's what I call a deep work with people.
Okay.
So I do part coaching, and then it's also a process that I go through to help them resolve uncomfortable memories, traumatic memories, things that are haunting them from the past that can help them to get relief and release, so that they can also live up into their best selves and become the leader that they want to be.
Right. Hopefully we can unpack a little bit of that. So first up, Lucy, what role has personal development played in your life and career? And then how do you recommend that for your clients?
Wow. Huge, huge part. Like I said, I was very, very shy when I entered the health and nutrition world. And so personal development was something that I had to do if I wanted to get anywhere, if I wanted to be able to talk to people, if I wanted to be able to present. I had to be able to develop personally, literally. And so there were books that I was shown and given. And I remember going to one seminar, and I'm pretty sure it was a Jim Rohn quote. And it was, for things to change, you have to change. For things to get better, you have to get better. I'm like, oh, me? I have to get better. It's not me trying to work on my business. Work harder on yourself than you do on your business, Lucy. It was like, oh, okay. So it's not looking outside. If I can work more on me and up leveling how I feel, how I show up, how I speak, how I interact, that is going to up level everything else around me. And so that's been a huge impact. And then for the second part of that question, which was, how do I feed that into my coaching? That's what I look for in people. I find out what their limiting beliefs are. Do they have a vision? And how are they working on themselves? Who are they listening to? It's like their environment in their head. Who are they listening to? Who are they hanging around? Who are they, what podcasts are they listening to? So that kind of a thing, some people don't recognize it, but a lot of people do these days. If you're somebody who goes, oh, I don't really recognize that in myself, then start to recognize that and think, if I'm listening to stuff that's bringing me down, that's negative, people that are bringing me down, people that are negative, then perhaps I ought to just pull away from them a little bit. So it's finding out, when I'm doing that coaching, is what their environment is, what's their people environment, and what's their mind environment. What are they taking in on a daily basis?
Right. And that's another thing that I had to discover that for myself, because after I graduated high school and got into my career, I thought, okay, well, that formal education is behind me, and now I'm doing this, on the job training. But unfortunately, I just had to get to a really low place in my life. It was 2008, and I made this transition for myself in 2009. And my biggest takeaway, I discovered Jim Rohn myself in 2009, and that has been a pivotal part of my journey. I'm still surprised by how many people don't have an intentional practice of personal development. And I'm, from the time that I started my career until 2008, I had a professional development, but not a personal development. Have you experienced the same thing?
I think with the people that I work with, they are more attuned to that. But I know that people that come from the higher kind of business background and are in corporations, they're the people who generally tend not to have that effective pattern and those effective habits of doing personal development. And it's like, oh, isn't that stuff you just leave on the bookshelf? No. You need to do that because it's inside you, and that comes out. When you're a leader, you're not managing people, you're managing yourself to help people and being that kind of a leader that is there to serve and to lift others. That's the kind of leader that brings the best out in others and gets the best results.
Absolutely.
So that personal development is huge.
Totally agree. So we alluded to this in our introduction when we talked about comfort zones, and let's face it, it is just a part of the human condition. But what do you recommend for pushing past comfort zones and getting into growth?
First of all, you need to recognize them where they are. It's like, where am I feeling too comfortable and I'm not stretching myself? And so that's the very first thing. And then the reason why somebody's not doing that, is it through procrastination? Is it kind of laziness? Is it because they're calling themselves a perfectionist? Is it because they're scared? So it's like identifying that thing that's stopping them to push through. Is it just because they don't know how to push through? When you find out what that thing is, then you can work with it. So if it's a fear, it can then be going back to what I was talking about before, that process. It's like, where did that fear come from? Is it something that's locked in from the past, locked into your nervous system from the past, and you feel that something really terrible is going to happen on the other side because it always used to, or it did once or twice before in your earlier life? And so being able to identify that first, then you can take the steps. So I guess an easier answer to that for somebody who wants to do it for themselves is try to identify what that is that's stopping them stepping out their comfort zones. Oftentimes it's fear of some kind or another. And to take the smallest step towards it, just one tiny step towards it, and maybe it's just sending an email or picking up the phone to somebody or sending a text message to somebody, just a tiny, and you think, well, that's not going to get me there. Yes, it will, if you keep taking those tiny steps further forwards.
Those incremental gains.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's go back to the one iconic one that you used in your introduction as well, and that's again, I call it iconic because the fear of public speaking is, I think I've heard it said that it's usually right up there. It might even be right above death, actually, as far as what people are afraid of. And You've got a specific example. Well, maybe it's more than a specific example, but could you share, because it sounds like you have gotten past that? Well, obviously you're a speaker now, so that's a pretty iconic example. How did you get past that for your public speaking journey?
If I go back to that very first time, and I remember it so well, I remember the room and the people that were there and the lady who was dragging me up. And all I had to do was to say my name and what result I'd had. And that was really, really short. But I can remember forgetting what my name was and coming off that stage like so shaking and bright red. And like I said, sitting down and just thinking never again. But we were expected to go up and tell our name and give a result, and go up and tell our name and give a result that we'd had. So it just became part of the process. And each time I sat back down again, it was like, okay, I'm still alive. I survived. I can do it better next time. So I go up and I do it again. And it's like, that's better. Then I was asked to do a little bit more than just that, right? So then you have to get up and you spend 5 minutes up there. And then I was going up again and be doing a 20-minute presentation or a 40-minute presentation. And I got to the stage this was over years, Jeff, where I remember the biggest audience that I spoke in front of was 700 people. The room was absolutely packed and there were people standing up against the walls. I don't think health and safety would have been very happy about it. I think that process is just going over and over and over and doing it again and again, and knowing that whatever that fear was the other side, I'm still alive to tell the tale.
Right. My best analogy on getting out of comfort zones is getting a vaccination. So why do we get inoculations and vaccinations, in some cases, technically getting a little bit of the poison or a little bit of the disease in advance, where you're putting into your body, and your body learns to identify. That's what you mentioned before, awareness. And then it learns to fight off that little bit of discomfort. So if you go get a flu shot, for example, you're getting a little bit of the flu and your body learns to fight that off. And sometimes you get a little low grade fever, that kind of thing. But then when you really do get exposed to the virus later, your body knows what to look for, and it starts to work on your behalf from the inside out. And that has been probably my best analogy to how getting outside of comfort zones. And I went through the process myself with public speaking through Toastmasters, which I always highly recommend because it's such a safe space to explore public speaking, and you get really great feedback. So anyway, I thought I would throw my inoculation example in.
Well, and I totally back up the Toastmasters thing as well. They're a fantastic organization. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Lucy, could we hear a little bit more about your Grace and Grit coaching?
Yeah. I think, again, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. So the grace comes from the dancing, right? So being an ex-dancer, that's where the grace comes in. It's like being elegant with the person that you're speaking with and allowing them to have grace, because sometimes people put themselves down and I ought to be doing this and I should be doing that. It's like, no, have a little bit of grace for yourself, give yourself some time, lift yourself up rather than putting yourself down, because it's like, that's not going to help. If you keep putting yourself down, you're pushing your energy down. And so give yourself grace. What have you achieved? Who did you speak to? What are you grateful for? What's happened? All of the accolades that you can give yourself, and then keep telling yourself those things. So that's the grace side on kind of two sides of the fence. And then the grit side is two-sided. I can get quite gritty in my coaching if somebody's not doing what they say they're going to do, which I said before. But also with the peak performance, there are 6 different types of grit. And so we'll work through those different types of grit. One of them is fear grit. Again, that could be something like the public speaking. Have the grit to face your fears. And what are your fears? And have the grit. Sometimes it's one of the grits is to have the grit to recover, which sounds strange, but a lot of high performers just keep going and going and going and going. And I've got to get it done and I've got to do it and I can't stop. And you have to have the grit to recover after a day or during your day. It's hard for people to do that. So that's like the two sides of the grit, from my side of the fence and from theirs.
Love that. Yeah, I see the same thing. Well, I've seen the same thing in myself as a high performer, pushing really hard, oftentimes pushing too hard. And when we don't have the appropriate rest, whether that's for our mind or our physical body, I'm a big fan of the word oscillate. So it's just like any of the other, circadian rhythms. The sun comes up and the sun goes down. And if we are constantly on in our professional life and there's no oscillation to rest and recover, then that's not a sustainable model. Totally in agreement with you on that point. I'd like to talk a little bit about habits. So when I was researching our conversation today, I noticed that you've got a really big focus on habit formation in general. And I think in my study, I picked up on micro habits. So can you talk a little bit about either habit formation or micro habits specifically, how you've either used that in your own life for success or how you use that with your clients?
Yeah. Micro habits, and going back to the example of just doing one tiny little thing like sending an email or picking up the phone or something, it's getting into the habit of doing something that can seem really small and insignificant, but doing it over and over and over. There was one chappie I was working with, and he needed to write things down, but he said he would lose the book right? Like journaling. And so I said, okay, what do you do every single morning when you come downstairs or when you wake up? He says, oh, I'll pick up my phone. I said, okay, when you go to bed at night, put your phone on top of your journal. And then when you go to pick up your phone, there's your journal. So the habit was getting to a habit of nighttime to put his phone on his journal so he could always find his journal. Right. And it was so simple. He's like, I didn't even think of that. That's really, and I call that, again, it's habit stacking. So his habit was to go to the phone. And then because that's already there, you're stacking a habit. Now I'm going to journal. I said, even if it's for 5 minutes, you've got it. Oh, let me just do my 5 minutes journaling. And so that's micro habits and habit stacking. And the way that I use it in the same way. So when I come downstairs, there are certain habits that I do. And with the phone, I've got things that are recorded on my phone that I know I need to listen to get my level of vibration higher at the beginning of the day, to implant the good stuff so that I can move forward in my life. I can level up that personal development side. And I do a success ritual every morning. So they're just some of the habits that I put into place, and switching my computer off at a certain time, going to bed at a certain time, most of the time. So those habits, once you get into them, and it seems like it can seem like it's too constricting, but actually when you get into those habits, you have so much more free time. Because if you've got those habits in place and you know when you're going to do something and you've only got that amount of time, and then you know you're doing something else and you've got that amount of time, rather than, oh, what can I do now? I've got so much to do. I don't really know where to start. Then those habits, those little micro habits of setting the time and doing it in that time, will give you a lot more free time at the end of your day.
I love that. Intentional is the word that I think of and like to use with my clients. And I'm a big fan of AM and PM bookends. So those are generally the most controllable parts of our day, and specifically the morning, right? And so I love the fact that you use those ritual that you have each morning. Any recommendations, or what does your practice include? I have a little bit of meditation myself and journaling gratitude, and I do a carpe diem journal every morning to make sure. So how about your and then if you want to share any
at this point, it does change, but at the moment what it is, it's the listening to the things that I've recorded, and that goes on for about 15 minutes. Journaling then, if I feel that that's what I want to do. So sometimes that doesn't always come up, but sometimes it does. But the other thing is the success ritual, and that is, it's like a 10-minute ritual that I do that is, again, it's implanting where I want to be and what I want to see in my life as if it's here already. And just the gratitude comes in. I'm so joyful and grateful that all of these things have happened already. And one book, the very small book that people might want to pick up and read, is called The Science of Getting Rich. Wallace Waddle. Yeah. So that's a great one to pick up and read, and that will help you understand what that success ritual might look like for you.
I love that. Great. You alluded to this next piece that I wanted to cover a little bit in the beginning, but it's about surrounding yourself with positive people. And so the real question is, surrounding ourselves with positive people is necessary, but not always easy. What do you recommend? Either what have you done in your life, or what do you recommend to your clients in relationship to positive people?
Yeah. If you're in a relationship that's not serving you, and like you say, sometimes it can be a very close relationship that you can't move away from very easily. But if it's a friendship, if it's somebody at a group that you go to, then it's easier to disentangle yourself from that relationship, or stay away from it, or completely cut it off. And you can have that conversation with someone and just say, I don't feel like this relationship is serving us anymore. There's no hard feelings. I just feel like sometimes it's a season, sometimes it's for a lifetime. I just feel like our seasons come to an end, and, gracefully move on. And if it's somebody in your life that's there more permanently, then it can be harder. But having those conversations that can be talking about what brings you down, and perhaps they could be more positive about something. Or sometimes you're doing something and somebody disagrees with it, right? They don't like what you're doing. And so they're going to talk about that thing to you, and you don't want to hear that negativity. Then ask them, if they don't have anything positive to say about it, please don't say anything. So again, it's just having the conversations that can feel really difficult and tricky, putting that out there and seeing how it lands. And sometimes you just have to move on from one of those kinds of relationships as well. But, I don't advocate that if you can work through it, it's better. If you can get that communication going. And seeing who is the negative influence in your life, seeing what's serving you as well. It's that awareness of, is that person lifting me up? Are they wanting me to win? Are they wanting me to go for it? Are they wanting me to get that next job? Are they wanting all of the good stuff for me? Or are they trying to push me down? And so having that awareness of those people in your life, however long they've been around you, is huge.
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Jim Rohn's philosophies on this. He would call it associations, right? So you either have to look at the associations that you have in your life and either limit them in this example that we're using with negative people, or there's relationships that we might want to expound on, right? We find people in our lives just on the other side of the coin that are super positive, or they're inspiring to us, or they've done something in their life and career that we want. And not everybody is like this, but when you surround yourself with folks, and most people that that do create that level of success are interested in helping and sharing. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of, again, I would go back to that exact same word that I used before, which is to be intentional, right? And you use that very powerful word again of awareness, because it seems like most things in life start with our own level of awareness about who, and we could even be the who, right? Because I work with a lot of clients, well, not a lot, but I work with some clients that, and let's face it, again, it's the human condition when we get in our own head, right? We can be our own worst enemy, or we could potentially be our own best cheerleader. And again, there's a little bit of oscillation in life, but ultimately, I just feel like it's a choice.
Yeah, and that's who we need to be. And it's not a one-time thing. It's not like, hey, I'm the best, I can do this, this, and this, and now I'm done. It's like every single day you have to keep telling yourself that. And the way that I look at that as well, it's like, how many years have you been doing the opposite? How many years have you been going, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I'm not worthy? And now you need to build up the same number of years the other side, doing that every single day, so that you can counteract that downtime, so that you've got that positive coming in. And you're always the first to hear it, right? Whatever you're saying about yourself, you always hear it. Not everybody else always hears it, but you always do.
All right. Well, I want to hit on self confidence next. So, what's your perspective on self confidence, and what can we do to cultivate that further in ourselves?
Oh, well, I think it comes back to stepping out of your comfort zone, right? And doing those things that you wouldn't normally do. And oftentimes that confidence comes from self-belief. They're quite intertwined, or they can be quite intertwined.
Right.
And so it's a cycle. And that self-belief, if you do something, you think you're going to get a certain result, or you're saying you're going to get a certain result, and that's why you don't believe it can work for you. But if you do it and you step into that, I can't really do that, but you do it anyway, do the thing you don't think you can do anyway, Now you get a new result and you get a new level of self-belief because you did it. And what's on the back end of that is that your confidence grows. And so if you keep stepping out and doing those things that you can't do, taking the actions on new things, I don't think I can write a book. I don't think I can lead this group. I don't think I can. Do it anyway. And you will find a way to push through, and you will do it. You'll pull something from inside. And now you have the new belief, oh my goodness, I can do that. I can write a book. I can lead this group. I'm here, and they gave me praise. And now my confidence level has gone up. So now I can lead a bigger group. Now I can do a better presentation, whatever that thing is. Just keep leaning into it and leaning into it. And that self-confidence is going to rise up.
Love that. I can't remember who's been popularizing this lately, but I've heard it said that, people that are waiting for confidence to do the thing, right? The action, the doing is the predecessor to confidence. You don't have confidence and then do the thing. You do the thing and ultimately build confidence.
Yeah, 100%.
Lucy, can you talk to us a little bit about, I know you've got a 12-week peak performance program that you're doing with some of your clients. I'd love to hear more about that.
It's a 12-week group program, and it was actually built out. It was originally built out as 8 weeks, but there was so much packed into it that I had to expand it out to 12. And the way that I built it was through the clients being like a beta course. And so building it out, understanding what their needs were each week. I kind of had a skeleton structure of it. And then it would be leading into things like, what do they believe about themselves? How do they show up? What's their vision? And what is their environment? And what are their goals? And how do they set that? And what's their level of health within the group? And within a group structure, you get this lovely synergy of people, and you hear different people's experiences. And that can be such a huge part of the program. When you get people in there that want to find their purpose, redefine whatever it is, and they want that peak performance. They want to reach that. They really want to get everything sorted out in their life, because it becomes not only about a business that they're doing, it also flows into your life once you become that, because those actions, those habits, that leaning into your fear, that stepping into your comfort zone, all of those things you learn within that group program and you put into your life, it makes a huge difference. And so every week I would begin by finding out if everybody had done what they said they were going to do, because they just went away with like one thing to do. And had they done it, and how did it feel? Right. And then what's the next step for them? So there was an accountability to that as well. And that's huge. And then another thing with peak performance is the feedback. So you're getting feedback right away for yourself, and sometimes from yourself, but then also from the group.
I love that. Team accountability.
Yeah.
Okay. So I usually love to ask these two questions to all my guests that are related to leadership specifically, Lucy, but who has been the most impactful leader in your life or career, and how so?
I think for the personal development side, there are two. I can't just go down to one, Jeff. Jim Rohn, definitely. And Mike Dooley is another one. He's been very impactful on the personal development side. And then I would say on the leadership side, it has been the two people that I'm working with at the moment, and they won't be known to your audience. One is Sean Stewart and one is Stacey Lauren, and they are both excellent in their own areas, but they're both completely different, and they lead in different ways. One is very, very specific and has got everything nailed. The other one does it messy, but he's got huge inspiration, huge vision. And she's one of those people that I'm just going to do it and find out what happens. How does it land? I'm going to test it. Whereas he's done this, and he's got all of the books and the notebooks and the workbooks. So I find as leaders, and working with each of them is hugely impactful for me, because they're just such a different, on a different level, but both really, really high level leaders.
I love that. Great examples and two different perspectives.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What is the best actionable leadership lesson that you have learned in life or in your career that you could share with the community?
Ooh, love that question. What is the best actionable leadership? I would say being a servant leader, because that is actionable. And that saying very much came from a book that I read, and understanding that I think I was a servant leader anyway. It's always about lifting other people, not yourself. And the more you help other people get what they want, the more you happen to get what you want. So it was that the leadership of helping others to rise helps you to rise anyway. So I think that's a really impactful lesson that I learned through that.
Wonderful. Well, Lucy, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. I really appreciate your time and sharing both your experience and your work with our Rise Leader community. I'd like to go ahead and mention it's actually Grace, the letter N, and then gritcoaching.com. I did get that correct?
graceandgritcoach.com. Yeah.
Grace and Grit Coach. Thank you for the correction. So thank you so much for being with me. I would like to thank our sponsor, Burgess. Better Building Starts Here. I would like to thank the Rise Leader community. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave us a review if you would, please. Thank you so much, Lucy, again, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of The Rise Leader. Thanks for joining us today. To connect further, visit riseleadershipaz.com, where you can find show notes, resources, and more episodes. You can also find The Rise Leader on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback helps us reach more leaders and continue to deliver valuable content. Until next time, remember to step up, make a difference, and lead with impact. This is The Rise Leader, signing off.